day as well between COOLLERZ and CNZ.
Let us keep in mind that this is an important matchup. They might not be playing for #1 seed in EU, but this is still quite crucial because both of these players are still somewhat in the danger zone for ending up in relegation. So every map they can take home is going to matter tremendously so in this stage of the season. Now we're starting it off on CNZ, and as you predicted, Lethal, rather slow and calculated start. No immediate bouts of aggression, but it is COOLLERZ who manages to apply most of the pressure with some good tri-bolt and a flyby shotgun. Thing is that he's missing that heavy machine gun, so he can't engage in those long fights the way that CNZ can. Won't let it really get to him though, as he just pushes in, takes away the heavy, and is determined to take a fight over at the Mega. Both players relatively low, and it's going to be a trade. COOLLERZ taking down CNZ with the rockets as the peeker is flying in his face.
Certainly was indeed. That was absolutely ridiculous. Now though, COOLLERZ, us here, but it could be in the red room, is going to try and pull back the best of his ability. Just be waiting for that heavy now. CNZ is now going to try and challenge this, but I think he realizes that it's a little bit too late to the party. He's going to try and pull all the way back, but oh, that was very, very close. Considering the circumstances, he had to put it himself through though. But now though, biding his time here, but the LG will be coming out for both players, but it looks like CNZ would not be winning that engagement at all, because now COOLLERZ will be up 2-1.
CNZ hitting a massive 48%, make it 51% LG accuracy so far, and these have not been the easiest battles to track your opponent in, so his aim is looking phenomenal so far, as he does manage to tie things up and has got a better position to take this fight. The high ground tends to be the most favorable place to take these fights from. Now COOLLERZ kind of stuck in a bad position. CNZ has an opportunity to keep him at bay, but those nail guns are hurting so much. The Estonian player can't stick around. 12 points of health. This is an opportunity for COOLLERZ to take a frag, and he will. Once again, we see the peeker result in a death for CNZ.
COOLLERZ does get the totem up. It gets to heavy just to make matters worse now for CNZ. But it comes in with the LG, but only just missed that rocket. And it looks like CNZ will be coming out on top in that engagement and picks up the Mega as well. So giving him plenty of leadway to carve himself into the lead if he can get this next frag. But COOLLERZ just waiting. Oh, what a rocket! It's about to go straight off the map. This is only the first game here, Flea, as already we've seen him go straight off, no problem, and now Heavy will be up in the next second, and he does actually have time to go and contest this Mega.
That was a brilliant play by CNZ. He just sat there and waited, listening to the nail gun just come closer and closer, and that way he could tell that COOLLERZ was closing the distance, and then that perfectly timed and placed rocket to the face, sending his opponent off the map. CNZ now a 2-frag lead. As COOLLERZ secures the LG, and now the next major item is going to be heavy. I don't think COOLLERZ is really in any position to make a blind charge. He's lacking the weapons and the stack to do so, but he does get away with some of the small armors around the map, and now he is in fighting shape, but CNZ is waiting for him. Those rockets, they hurt once more. The trap gets sprung, and COOLLERZ falls victim to that barrage of damage once more.
Good thing about that last engagement for COOLLERZ. Yeah, sure, he didn't get that frag, but he made sure as well that his stack wasn't as strong as it was previously, which means he won't let CNZ let things spiral out of control. But as I've just said, that he picks up the heavy, so matters will be worse for COOLLERZ, and he knows that CNZ is on his case. Just trying to hide on that LG, waiting for CNZ to come in through. But as he turns his back, CNZ perfectly goes in for the telly. He's going to try and finish up with the peeker if he can. And that is beautiful stuff there from CNZ to get that 7th frag.
The low health scream on COOLLERZ and just gave it away, making CNZ aware that his opponent would fall to one ability like that. And now COOLLERZ has been sacrificing and bleeding a whole lot of frags. CNZ is making excellent use of that extra mobility that he has. The crouch slide works so nicely for Strog, whereas Galena is really just a default slow medium champion, and CNZ is just running circles around the map, making good use of that extra speed. Now COOLLERZ finally securing a Mega without immediately being punished for it. But those are some big rockets, and that burns away the major item that he just secured. The lack of rockets, the click proves to be the saving grace for Cooler, and now CNZ is the one on the back foot as the Russian AMD player gets himself on the heavy. This might be the tides shifting in Cooler's favor.
Yeah, let's see what Cooler can do here. Still got 4 frags to catch up on as we're at the halfway stage. Still got plenty of time to work with. There's no trying to find out exactly where CNZ could be. Does burn that light just to make sure that CNZ can't recuperate in any way in terms of stack. But I do like how Cooler plays with the Galena as well. He's very strategic in terms of where he's told him a place. He uses more for information than he does for the huge amount of stacks, but it does clean him up nicely with the LG bout there, and now looking to contest that Mega as well. He does realise that CNZ was very tempted to approach it, but he would not have made it in time. So now he's going to have to try and circle all the way around to see if he can try and catch him. That was a great play there from Cooler, but CNZ rockets are just way too strong. But the good thing is he does pick up that shotty. The heavy will come in the next couple of seconds, but CNZ is already there to contest it. And Cooler just waited to stand his ground. See if he can get a couple of point blanks if he can, but it looks like he will not be able to, as CNZ now up 10-5.
Mega will be going. CNZs are rather in Cooler's favor. And he gets a quick frag with the heavy machine gun from below. Still a 6-point deficit though, but Cooler, I think he still has 2 of those totems up on the map. Might be able to make something work with that. But he's got to be careful. That peaker damage has been so consistent so far. And the rockets from above. That just burns away the advantage, and CNZ somehow just turns it around.
It certainly does indeed, but he's going to try and take out Cooler again if he can, but it's so close between the two. That one shot definitely would have done it, but same with Cooler though, was CNZ left on 1 HP. A little bit of a shame for him, but never mind. Now he's got 3 minutes left remaining. CNZ just doing his absolute best to keep these totems under control, but also at the same time making sure he can try and restack. But Cooler's not giving him the chance here, but at the same time just taking a lot of his rocket damage across the board. As CNZ just doing a good job just playing on the defense here, just having a nice passive stance on Cooler's approach. But Cooler does manage to find him with the LG, misses that last 2 rockets. He actually didn't really do himself any favours, sadly, as CNZ's now up 13-5.
This is very quickly getting out of hand for Cooler. Time is his worst enemy right now. Especially when you're trying to chase down an opponent that is so much faster than you. And by now I really don't see CNZ dropping this lead, especially not when he is still in control of the item. CNZ picked up the previous heavy as well, still looking solid, and is even getting some frags. Cooler, this is not the stage where he can afford to drop even a single frag. And I think that is probably going to spell GG already.
Do you know what? That wouldn't be too much of a surprise after taking that 71 from the last rocket as well. He's just trying to stay alive. Good work with the heavy machine gun. Just keep his distance at the same time, even though Cooler is very, very weak at this stage. As he does pick up the heavy, but you've got to remember though, like, a minute 40 left, not going to happen. 9 frag deficit. It's going to be very, very bleak for Cooler. It's now CNZ just making sure to keep him at bay, just in case. You never know in these kind of situations, but the rockets do come out for both these players. It's Cooler looking to be the aggressor as he rightly needs to, but these peeker plays from CNZ have been remarkable, just in terms of pathing and where he actually likes to select for the peeker to go in terms of trying to at least catch Cooler off guard. He's done it on numerous occasions, and you rightly said earlier, but he's made great use of that peeker almost every single time, and already some good shots there from CNZ. Needs to back away again, but Cooler's on the flank, going up to that rocket jump pad, and now CNZ just continuing to try and keep his distance and recuperate from these engagements.
I think the only thing that Cooler can really do is maybe build some momentum to kick off map 2. If he can get a few frags right now, keep the aim nice and warm, that could help his confidence moving into map 2. But this is over and done. It will be CNZ securing this first map of the series, which means that we will be going into ruins shortly after this. CNZ had a tremendously strong start. The LG, 51% LG, and he had fired a hell of a lot of cells by that point. really proved to be a bit too much for Cooler. And then there were a few very strategic kills by CNZ where he kind of set up these clever traps with the rockets, waiting around the corner, knowing exactly where Cooler is at, allowing his opponent to come to him, jump around the corner first, and then just pinging him against the wall to get a nice and easy cleanup kill. And I think that at one point that just snowballed out of control, and Cooler tried to wrestle back a few frags from his opponent, but in doing so ended up giving up far too much that he could bring back towards the end. So this is a convincing and well-deserved victory for CNZ. Not sure, I didn't get to see the predictions before we started, but I do imagine that quite a few people won big on this one.
I'd assume so as well, absolutely. And CNZ winning that 18-5, that's not a scoreline I expected to start off with, because Cooler is very good at corrupted key. We've seen it time and time again, but it just seems like CNZ was just that much better, and it's just a little bit of a shame because Cooler did his absolute best to make sure things spiraled, well, didn't spiral out of control, you could say, but some of these Pika plays were just remarkable. These rockets as well. I just feel like CNZ was just on a level at this point, but we will be going into Ruins. It's not really, you know, the kind of way that Cooler wanted to go into the second map after that scoreline, but we know what he's like. He is a veteran in his own right. He will be able to recuperate with his mental fortitude and reset going into this next one. But yeah, you can see the LG 40% for CNZ, considering how much he actually fired as well, and always keeping his distance, and even in terms of the damage as well, 1117 damage more. That's pretty huge considering the size of the map as well.
Indeed, this was very much determined by CNZ's superior aim this time around, and also, of course, the mobility and the ability that Pika or Strawcrawler comes with helped him out tremendously, right? I think there was one point where Cooler got all 3 totems up at once, and then he died through that brilliant rocket as he was falling right back down the moment he actually got the health injection. So he really didn't manage to make that much out of those Galena totems, whereas CNZ used the Peaker effectively and consistently. Yes, there were a few times where he ended up, you know, dropping a frag or getting a trade by using that ability and putting himself in a precarious situation, but overall I think it was a net gain and a pretty significant benefit for him. Add on to that the damage as well as the mobility, and Cooler just kind of got outplayed on most of those fronts.
You can see from the item control as well, CNZ actually had 20 and Cooler had 18, so there wasn't really too much of a struggle in terms of congestion. It's just, you could tell that CNZ got a lot more value out of those items as well, and just good timing as well. There's a lot of things coming into it there, and just checking the predictions as well. It seems like CNZ's actually on 66%. I think they saw that last map and went, yeah, I think we'll give CNZ a bit of a chance here, because that's how they feel considering. But I don't know, because don't get me wrong, they both like Ruins. It's not like it's swaying either way. Don't get me wrong, the first map should have been for Cooler, because that is one of his better maps in terms of the cycle, and statistically he's been very good on corrupted keep, but didn't really show it as much on that map there, which is a little bit uncharacteristic, especially for his stature. But going into Ruins now, I want to know your prediction here, Philippe, because from what we've just seen so far, like we said before, Cooler tried to keep it under control. He just couldn't, even though he was still contesting the items very, very well overall. But going into Ruins now, I want to see, do you think CNZ can continue this momentum and be able to defeat Cooler in that kind of massacres? I think things could be a little bit more different this time around.
I'm inclined to agree. Last time they played on this map, Cooler won by a single frag. It was the closest game in the series, and it was an extremely hard-fought battle for both of these players. Now, in terms of champion picks, we're kind of seeing a bit of a reverse of what we saw earlier. This time it is CNZ who's playing with the turret. Earlier it was Cooler who was using the totem, whereas this time around it is the Russian player running a visor, and we know that Cooler is capable of using that piercing sight to an extremely efficient degree. His game sense to begin with is already spectacular, so if you add on to that ability that allows him to get a quick look at where his opponent might be, he can apply a lot more pressure to his opponent than he did on the previous map.
We are going to start from CNZ's POV. Items already segregated quite well, so we can find out who's going to get full control so early on. As both of them just approaching each other slowly. We'll find each other on top, and you can see who's going to win this last engagement, but he missed that last rocket. Gets a good last rocket in the end, but still though, pretty weak, left on 34 HP. But COOLLERZ takes himself out in the end. He had the high ground as well, and plus the Mega is up, but it looks like CNZ is going to prioritize the light, go straight for this Mega, but he realized that COOLLERZ already there. He actually went for the Mega first instead on spawn, and COOLLERZ now back to where he was 30 seconds ago, just keeping that high ground, but now COOLLERZ has full item control going into this.
That might very well have been an intentional suicide by COOLLERZ, just to get a respawn before Mega spawn so he could make the most out of that ability.
True.
If he had just continued around with 9 points of health, picked up Mega, he would have been essentially at 0 health, or at 100 health, 0 armor, nothing to go with, whereas CNZ would be outstacking him massively. So that could very well have been a deliberate decision to just get a clean respawn back with that starting stack and to have Mega work in his favor. And clearly it's not such a bad decision, since he manages to tie the game up very quickly afterwards. Now there are around 10 seconds between the items. Mega is going to be spawning first. That means that CNZ has the better position for the Mega health to spawn, but COOLLERZ, pretty significant rocket to the face, but unable to really follow it up. And he will have to give up the Mega health. Nice little railgun there though. CNZ not looking all that healthy and is even delaying the Mega pickup. Really clever play from CNZ. He wanted to realign the item timings for both of the majors so that he didn't give COOLLERZ a nice in back into control.
COOLLERZ had a good first rail, but CNZ responded in beautiful fashion, going 2 for 2. Oh, nice rocket as well, and you can see there he's going to get absolutely torn apart by the turret. There was absolutely nowhere COOLLERZ could have gone, sadly for him, but it doesn't matter now. CNZ barely took any damage either, which means they can easily take on this next bout, but not after that 2 for 2 from COOLLERZ. But remember, CNZ does pick up the heavy. He's going to try and recuperate just a little bit more here. As now COOLLERZ still looking very good in terms of his rail accuracy, just making sure he's keeping CNZ on his toes. CNZ having to back away again, just gets through that TP, and CNZ now just waiting COOLLERZ to make that first move. We'll be able to find him. Good, nice, 2 clean rockets there from CNZ, extending his lead 3 to 0.
Nice catch of the spawn as well. COOLLERZ is in a really bad shape. All he's got is a tribal, but he is somehow making it work. CNZ left with 31 points of health, and somehow COOLLERZ, despite having nothing but a starting stack and a tribal, secures the Mega. That was a disgusting amount of damage to get CNZ to clear out the room. Now, for the first time in 2 rotations, we are actually seeing a bit of a delay between the items. Heavy spawning first, Mega shortly afterwards. If CNZ secures Heavy and immediately Rocket jumps back up, we might see the first real consistent dominant control of the map and the resources. But it looks like CNZ is more interested in doing damage, and I'm really liking how he's approaching this. Those surprise rockets, Lethal, have been bread and butter of CNZ's strategy today. He just sets up, allows COOLLERZ to make the first move and just blindly jump into the room or the choke point, and then he bounces him around with powerful rockets, and it's really paying off nicely for him. By applying this kind of pressure, he now has both of the majors, and COOLLERZ is really struggling to get solid footing.
Really is indeed, and you know what, it could continue to spiral out of control here, as again during that engagement COOLLERZ didn't really do enough damage to try and contest this next item. But you can see here Mega will be up in the next few seconds. CNZ does realise that, but it's going to take another path to see if it can catch COOLLERZ from behind, which he will be able to find him here. That was a good flank coming in from CNZ. Misses that last rocket, but you know what, does not matter. Left on 37 HP. Going to pick up a few of those health bubbles as well. And at the halfway stage, COOLLERZ though does pick up that Mega, so now he's got to try and get all the weapons in his arsenal once again. But by then, though, CNZ has already gone back to his default stack, just looking to see where COOLLERZ could be next. But I must say though, CNZ's flanks, his positioning, his defensive rockets and his rails have been on par today. Even made a few Houdini acts here and there to try and get away from COOLLERZ, but he would not be getting out of that one, as COOLLERZ does technically get his first frag. I suppose technically second frag after what happened earlier on above near that Mega area. But this will give COOLLERZ a little bit leadway here with a great stack to work with.
I can't help but feel as if COOLLERZ's map awareness just hasn't been as good as it should be. The rockets are now somewhat making up for it, but CNZ has got some murderous shots of his own, resulting in a trade. But like I said, I feel like COOLLERZ There's been some strategic mistakes here and there, some very careless positioning. Him just showing up in the center of the map at Railgun with nothing but a nail in his hands, not seemingly having any clue as to where CNZ might be at, or just jumping into the room and CNZ is waiting with a trap set up. Again, now Cooler, yes, he takes away the heavy, but he is no doubt going to drop yet another frag here by just blindly rushing into the room of spawn, and this is quite similar to what we saw on the previous map around the halfway point as well. Cooler suddenly almost carelessly approaching some of these situations, and it ends up costing him so many points that a comeback becomes nearly impossible.
That's right, time is running out. CNZ just trying to make sure he plays as cautiously as possible. He knows how things can get a little bit hectic at times on this, but these rockets from CNZ have just been incredible here, Flea. Just absolutely absurd. Now up 8-1. And people are thinking, well, what can Cooler do here? Well, this is the next question we're going to have to try and figure out ourselves, as the items are very close together here. So Cooler can't really get full control, even if he wants to at this point. And with time running out, it's going to make matters even worse. Misses that first rail, but it's already taken a little bit of damage from the turret. We'll come down with the LG, but Cooler does get that second frag. He's going to use that piercing sight to see if he can find out where CNZ is going next as he picks up that heavy. And it looks like CNZ's already dropped down for him, taking a ton of damage from the LG. Did a little bit onto the turret as well, but we'll be pushing with the LG, but CNZ gets the better of that engagement once again, and now it's up 9-2.
CNZ also sitting nice and pretty on that 69% railgun accuracy so far. He was up to 75 earlier, but he's now missed a few shots in a row, bringing it down a fair bit. But still, railgun has proved to be an instrumental weapon to his strategy. Finally hitting some shots again, but it's really been those long distance engagements, or rather those chips of damage, that have kept Cooler in line and that given CNZ quite a bit of mobility and freedom around the map without Cooler being there to really pressure him. Now here we go, the Russian makes for a good push, but somehow it slips in between his fingers. And that's exactly what we saw towards the beginning of this game as well. Lethal, there was a fight around the center area of the map on top of Railgun, where Cooler landed two excellent opening rockets, and then it somehow still goes wrong and CNZ gets the frag when he really shouldn't have gotten away with that. So Cooler, strategy not quite what it should be, and execution feels a little sloppy at times.
Yeah, it's not something we normally say about him either. It's a shame though, CNZ doesn't really need to do too much now. He's got a 9 frag lead, just needs to keep his distance and just keep Cooler guessing and just keep him on his toes really. That's going to be about it. And on a map like this, it's going to be very difficult in 90 seconds getting a frag every 10 seconds. So we already know pretty much that CNZ is going to be okay in terms of being able to win this map. And it's a shame, you know, in terms of the start, like the items were very, you know, heavily segregated right from the get-go, and you know things did start to tie up eventually, but then it just spiraled out of control once again. Pretty much a replica of this first map. So now CNZ here, just look at it. His rails have just been ridiculous though, Flea, especially his defensive rockets and the predictability of them as well. And like you rightly said as well, a lot of the times in terms of stack, CNZ has been at a disadvantage, but still came out on top.
And once more, the items are pretty much identical. Cooler actually has more majors than CNZ, but it's the damage. CNZ has got 1,000 points of damage over his opponent, really coming out on top in most of these fights. Cooler has come close several times, but just is unable to clean it up and close it out when it matters the most. And with 2 more beautiful rails at close quarters, CNZ will seal the deal and secure himself at the very least a victory with 2 maps already.
Just looking at some of the stats in terms of accuracy and all that bits and pieces, Cooler has only got 19% accuracy after firing 21 shots, but look at CNZ, opposite end of the spectrum, firing 28 and hitting 48% of his shots. Has been ridiculous. Well deserved by CNZ, as he does manage to take him down. 12-3 on that second map. Not something we expected once again. And what makes matters worse as well, now we're going to one of CNZ's best maps. It is going to be on Molten Falls. And I feel, you know, a little bit worried here for Cooler. It could be a 3-0 for CNZ.
very well could be, even though Cooler won this map in their last engagement. CNZ is absolutely on fire right now. And also, I think the champion picks just really don't favor Cooler right now. Nyx versus Scalebearer, that is something that can work if you've got a leg up over your opponent and if you're in a position to somewhat dictate the flow and the pace of the game. But that just really hasn't been the case for Cooler. And if those situations happen again, Lethal, where he gets caught by surprise, that stack advantage is just not going to give him any outs. He will constantly be forced to burn the Ghost Hawk defensively just to escape with his life and fight, or rather be pressured again moments later. So I'm really not confident in how this is going to go for Cooler.
We've seen clear indicators of why CNZ has actually been progressing really well in this matchup. I'll talk about that in a little bit, but you can see from the damage count as well, just under 900 damage done more for CNZ. And I was talking about the accuracy early on in terms of weaponry, 54% with the rockets, 48% with the rail, considering how much he fired. But the reason why I was going back to, back to the point I was making about there being a clear indicators, but even though he didn't take down Razy and Wenger a few weeks ago, there were some clear indicators that he had really improved and progressed a lot in terms of his recent form, and he's now shown it in this matchup as well. You can see that CNZ has probably got fed up with the fact that he's dancing with the relegation zone consistently each stage, and he just wants to step things up a little bit, and he really has done it, and I'm very pleased for him. I do feel sorry for Cooler though, with his veteran experience and his wealth of knowledge, hasn't been able to capitalize in this matchup, considering he had cut to keep to start off with as well, and now to finish things off he has to deal with CNZ on Molten Fall. So go from bad to worse here possibly, Flea, but hopefully Cooler's got some life in him.
CNZ right now is, if he can keep this up in the matches coming in the next few weeks, he could absolutely escape relegation for what might be one of, if not the very first time since he joined the Quake Pro League. Just last stage he had to fight for his survival in the league by playing against Buckster, which is a game that he obviously won, otherwise he wouldn't be here today. But so far, if he can keep this up, he could absolutely put a fair few points in between himself and some other contenders like Sparty, Garpy, and maybe even Cooler. So CNZ is looking good, and this is very promising for the Estonian player.
I feel like depending on his next matchups after this from weeks 10 to 13, if he does 3-0 here, there's probably, a 70-80% chance that he can keep himself out of the running from the relegation zone and be able to secure himself a natural spot where he's probably going to think to himself, wow, I've come into a stage final and I don't have to deal with a relegation spot anymore. I can actually just be known that I can be safe, secure, and actually focus on my own game. And CNZ always steps things up anyway at every single stage final, like everyone else does, because everyone puts in like twice the hours into make sure they can put on the best of their ability in terms of their performance. But I don't know how you feel what Cooler can do here to, respond to CNZ's actions in these first two maps, because it has been quite one-sided so far. But then again, Cooler, we have seen elements in his gameplay where we've gone, in terms of his strategic influence trying to approach CNZ in a lot of his bouts, he's been playing very well in terms of movement and positional advantage. But at the same time, his aim hasn't really been complementing that, which is a little bit of a shame. But we'll go into this third map now and we'll see if Cooler can claw back a map for himself, or if CNZ can maybe win this 3-0.
That's a really solid opener for CNZ. Misses this shot though, but he will be able to take away the railgun, deny that weapon to Cooler, secure both of the small armors on the map, plus the mega health, and that leaves Cooler with just a sliver of armor to work with. He got the heavy off spawn, but that's all he got, and now he won't have much to work with for the next few seconds, and CNZ is in such a strong position right now, full domination of the map. 15 seconds between the items almost, and that allows him to set up consistent control and string all of them together. And Cooler now has no choice but to take an extremely careful and defensive playstyle.
Still, both his plans been a minute left. CNZ just trying to keep Cooler at bay in the corner, but both of them trying to contest that heavy. Cooler tried to do the best he could, but it just wasn't enough as CNZ managed to grab that with relative ease. Cooler though, a little bit worried that CNZ's above him, and you know what? He is absolutely right here. He's going to go down below instead and try and contest that Mega. Great timing as well, and I like what Cooler did there with the fact that he delayed it enough to keep CNZ looking at that positioning and was able just to scoot on through from the rail jump pad to go for that Mega. So that was really, really well thought out there. But CNZ knows that he's going to try and go through that telly to contest this heavy once again. And Cooler does manage to pick it up. So again, Cooler just carved himself a way to come back in this matchup. Still 2 minutes left, still no frags here, but this is exactly what we expected here, Fleet. In this matchup with the Scale Bearer and the Nyx, you know, it's going to be a lot more, you know, calculated plays coming from Cooler, just due to the fact that he has to do a huge amount of chip damage before he can go on the hunt.
I'm surprised CNZ didn't go all in on that fight. Given the stack advantage that he had after landing that rail, plus Cooler didn't have the Ghost Hawk anymore, that should have been a kill for CNZ. But perhaps he figured that he would take too much damage with Mega being too far away, that he'd rather delay it until he gets it at a more opportune time, which this most definitely is. Rail of the spawn as well. Cooler again being somewhat predictable, perhaps a little careless in the drop down as well. Yes, Railgun is going to be the way he makes his way back into this map. But not like this. CNZ is just on his case, not giving up one bit. And kicking it off for a potential 3-0 victory.
It's looking very good so far for CNZ. And when you're that close to a scale, especially as a light champion, that's exactly what you're going to get. And you can see CNZ's stack is just ridiculous. Even if you miss these first two rails, it doesn't matter. Look at Cooler's starting stack here. This is just absolutely ridiculous. CNZ already up 4-0, even after the first couple of minutes of no frags. CNZ is making sure this does get out of control, but Cooler though has managed to use that Ghost Walk. It does try and come behind CNZ, but CNZ was more than prepared for that. And so far, just adding so much pressure. And even if Cooler does take this Mega, it seems like CNZ does have the weapon advantage in his arsenal. 2 HP, Flea. Oh dear, this is not looking so good for Cooler.
What's also really incredible is how good of a job CNZ has been doing at denying the small armors. Usually the player who's losing, who's out of control and who can't pick up the Megas or the Heavies will be the one to get most of the small armors. But this time around, Cooler has secured 2 pieces of armor versus CNZ's 12. That's absolutely nasty. You just have to keep an eye on it. He constantly uses that nail gun to do a little bit of self-damage and then deny these small armors around the map, making sure that there's nothing for Cooler to work with. Now, Cooler did get that one frag, but the prediction before we went into this game proved to be quite accurate. Cooler really is only able to use these Ghost Walks in an extremely defensive manner, either when he's nearly to death, or when he has to pop it to avoid a lot of damage, like we just saw. Again, Cooler somewhat carelessly just jumping into the nail gun room and has to pop that Ghost Walk mid-air to avoid just getting pinned down and dropping yet another frag.
Again, Cooler going to try and push in to take this out, but a trade will coming from both players. But I must say, earlier on, you were right, that, like, you know, CNZ was actually just going for the light armor, just to get better value from the stack so he can go straight for heavy afterwards. But the fact that Cooler was just coincidentally going in towards the rail, he was like, okay, I'll take a frag as well as the heavy. That's not going to be a problem, as he does push in. We'll be able to get away though, so he can't really complain there. Left on 39 HP, but needs to try and recuperate as quickly as possible. Down 9-2 on Molten Falls. It's gonna say it's a tall order for Cooler, but definitely not impossible. But it's going to take a little bit of time for him here. It's like I said before, he needs to take a lot more caution, considering he's got to do a lot of chip before he can try and take down CNZ. But CNZ is just going to be going in on him. It's full aggro day and night, no matter the situation, and will continue to pick up these frags. Now up 10-2.
The damage output is actually pretty much identical for these players so far. But it's no surprise that Cooler is doing a lot of damage, since he's firing at a much larger target than himself, rather. So that really isn't saying much. CNZ is in such consistent control of not only the map, but all the items as well. He is setting the pace of the game, and I think that that's exactly what I said before this map started, right? Nyx can work if you're in a position where you can somewhat dictate the flow and the pace, but that is not what COOLLERZ been doing at all. He's only been able to use his ability to really escape, and CNZ just powers on 13-2 already. Those railgun shots, Lethal, I hear you in the background. They are impressive to say the least.
It's just been an absolute massacre, isn't it, Flea? It's just, considering we're going to CNZ's best map as the final map in this series, it was just an accident waiting to happen, really, wasn't it? And COOLLERZ, he did try his absolute best at the start, but the problem is, with this scoreline being 14-2, the whole point of the Nyx against the scale is to, you know, like I said about having a lot of caution and having to do a lot of chip, being able to execute a lot of these attacks. It's just not going to work, but CNZ made him go out on the map, but he was like, well, do you know what, I'm just going to make matters worse for you. Rail, you just to finish things off, and his rails has just been absolutely splendid here, Flea.
52% railgun accuracy and 43% LG. Those are pretty high numbers when you consider that he's firing at one of the smallest champions in the entire game. Nyx, her hitbox is absolutely tiny, and still CNZ is just making it work. This is pure confidence right now, because he knows that he's won the series and that he's taken down one of the champions of Quake in a very convincing 3-0 fashion.
Yeah, we did not expect this in a perfect world, but CNZ is living the dream at the moment, considering every scoreline he's had. And after using that Ghost Walk, CNZ was like, okay, I'll take that heavy for free, no problem. As COOLLERZ, don't get me wrong, he was in position to contest it, but didn't have to stack to work with in order to try and keep him off that heavy, which is perfectly understandable. And again, CNZ's going to be jumping on up to try and take... Oh, he almost got taken down and then the rail straight afterwards. Oh, CNZ is just literally all gas, no brake here, even though he's got a huge lead. Great rocket once again, did 50-something damage and just doing a little bit more here. And another great rail from CNZ. He is absolutely on the hunt, just destroying COOLLERZ left, right, and center.
Just when it feels like CNZ is caught completely out of position and has to face impossible angles, he just lands the flick shot away with it regardless. COOLLERZ, really, there's nothing he can do. I don't even think it is a mathematical possibility to get 17 frags in 80 seconds. It just cannot be done. And I think that CNZ and his team, Dragonborn Esports, will be celebrating today, because this was one hell of a victory. CNZ last week taking down Garpy 3-0, now stringing COOLLERZ along as well. Is this a new CNZ that we are seeing born right before our very eyes? Lethal, can he carry this on as we move closer towards the finals? Who knows, but it sure is looking that way.
I was trying to think, because there was on one occasion at one of the stage finals, he played it out of his mind and actually qualified from the winner's side and then managed to bag top 6. I want to say it's like stage 1 finals or maybe last QuakeCon. It was definitely quite a while ago. After have a look back and just double check on that. But I've not seen CNZ since that day where he's played this well. And do you know what's even scarier is the fact that once everyone puts 2 or 3 times the hours in on terms of the grind going into QuakeCon, CNZ's going to be a very scary opponent to play against. And, you know, COOLLERZ pretty much just witnessed that. But we've already seen elements of that, you know, over the last few weeks in terms of his recent form. So looks like CNZ will be winning this game 20-2 CNZ. You just keep doing your thing. As again, another blowout victory for CNZ as he takes the series 3-0 over COOLLERZ.
And indeed, the matches that you were thinking of was actually the Quake World Championships. So QuakeCon last year, where CNZ first took down Garpy, barely lost. That was the relegation game for him that stage. But then he went on to take down Cypher 2-1. He beat Base 2-1 and qualified for the finals, indeed top 8, where he did end up losing to Rafa and The Hang. But nevertheless, it was an incredibly strong and unexpected performance. CNZ clearly was the black horse in that tournament, and I think that he can do it again if he can keep this momentum going and continues playing the way he has today and last week. Who knows, this could be a serious contender for top 8 once again.
So they could indeed. I'm glad my memory isn't that bad, and you've confirmed that, because I knew it was Stage 1 finals this year, or it was QuakeCon, but I'm glad it was QuakeCon anyway. So I knew it was one of the big ones he hasn't managed to bag that top 6. But having a look at the damage, though, 305 damage between the two of CNZ in favour, 53% in terms of rail accuracy against Enix as well, and that's, you know, remarkable to say the least. And even you could tell on some occasions as well, he was just running in with the rail at close range, not even having the LG or rocket out. So he wasn't even being careless. He was just super confident in his weapon accuracy and just being an aim star all round and Molten Full. So brilliant job from CNZ. Look forward to see how he does in the future. But Cooler is not going to be too pleased in terms of his performance in this matchup, because it was pretty much a blowout. But hopefully we'll see a lot more from Cooler in future weeks.
Yeah, I think that really the items tell the story for that final map, right? 30 light armors for CNZ versus 4 for Cooler, when it was Cooler who was out of control. And then if you look at the majors, 28 major items for CNZ versus just 9 on Cooler's end. Cooler, nicknamed the Pac-Man, a man who is so good at just hoovering up every single item on the map and denying those resources to the opponent, really just got outplayed when it came to that. He couldn't overcome the stack difference, and he couldn't rival the damage output that he needed to take down an opponent with a superior stack. So well played both, but this will be a very clear and well-deserved victory for CNZ.
Yeah, because we know what Cooler's like. He's a massive bully when it comes to items. He makes sure that he will give you, you know, as much pressure as he can trying to contest every single one of his items from a very strategic manner as well. But he was still doing that. In terms of positioning, it wasn't actually that bad, because he always came in at a stack disadvantage no matter what kind of circumstance he was in or what scenario he placed himself in. So he was always on the back foot each and every time, and it was a real struggle. But I'm just a little bit surprised about the first map, really, because I thought that was going to, well, you could say it did actually tell the tale of what was to come, because the score lines in terms of huge deficits every single map is not what I predicted in the slightest.
Indeed, I don't think this was an outcome that many people expected. The predictions for map 1 at least most definitely didn't. I think most people would have expected a 2-1 victory for either one of these players, but just look at this. CNZ, double-digit scores every single map, and Cooler, most frags he got was just 5, and that was on that very first map. So this was indeed quite the blowout.
Yeah, 50 frags to the 10 of Cooler. Not something you normally see every day, especially on the larger map scale as well we had to deal with in that series. And it was just a little bit of a shame, but I think by the time CNZ in that last map had a 5-6 frag league, you know what it's like with the scale versus Nyx matchup. It's very difficult for Nyx in terms of being able to try and be the aggressor and be able to try and make sure that you've got to do such a large amount of chip damage to even be able to have any kind of chance to take him down every single time. It's very hard, and it needs to be very well thought out. And that's why by the time he had that huge lead, I think Cooler felt in the same way, but he can do the best of his ability, but it's just not going to work out in the end.
Indeed, and I think that that more or less says it all for this first series of the day. CNZ, representing Dragonborn Esports, will get his second 3-0 in a row. So I do think that it's about time that we cut to a break, but don't go anywhere. We will be right back with more Quake Pro League in just a moment.